Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our afternoon session, Elevating Native Identities in the Historical Record. So for today's session, we're all kind of going to just introduce ourselves, and then Jerry's going to kick us off. So to start with, we also just wanted to, again, thank all of those who have been so instrumental in planning this amazing conference, and also to the amazing Santa Ana people who have welcomed us here onto their homeland. It's so wonderful to be here again. We know how much time and energy it takes to put all of this together, so just thanks to everybody and to the people who welcomed us here. Just before I, again, just wanted to introduce myself, and then I'll let Michael and Jerry introduce themselves. We really wanted to put this session together to be able to highlight, again, how tribal communities, whether it's tribal libraries, archives, or museums, can help to find the collections that represent their history, and often that is in repositories, in federal repositories, historical societies, other universities that are far from their homeland. So we put this session together to be able to highlight a variety of different ways to do that, but in particular, one that, again, Jerry is going to introduce, that's going to help to highlight how to bring a lot of those authority, control, and resources together. So for myself, I work at the University of Oregon in their archives as the university historian and archivist, and I also teach classes on Native history, American West history, and all around decolonizing research and sharing back with tribal communities, particularly in Oregon, the research that we do. So being able to make these connections to these types of records, not only for undergraduates and graduates, but also, most importantly, for tribal community partners, to help them to know where their collections reside, how to make those connections between where their collections may reside, but maybe making further connections about where they may not realize those collections are, and also where they may be in other repositories across the U.S. So again, that's just kind of giving you an idea of why we're doing this session, and we realize that many of you are coming from different repositories, different roles that you play. So before we begin, we also just want to kind of gauge the audience about, we realize maybe not everybody may be doing some of what we're going to be talking about, but we hope it can be applicable to maybe whatever role you play in your community. So how many out there are in a library? Okay, archive, museum, okay, or a mix of all three or four, which is what a lot of us are doing. So, and how many of you are actually describing your collections, meaning whether that's with an inventory, a finding aid, some sort of access? Are you, just raise your hand if you're creating collections so they're accessible in some way. Okay. What other questions did we want to ask that I forgot?
Are you familiar with the concept of authority control? Do you know what that means when we talk about that? Okay, that's great.
We just want to know if we were all going to be on the same, playing field, and that's okay if you don't. Jerry's going to highlight some of that. We just wanted to gauge the room. So I think I'll turn it over to, Michael, do you want to introduce yourself?
So I'm Michael Pahn. I'm the head archivist at the National Museum of the American Indian, where I succeeded Jennifer O'Neill, who used to be head archivist at the National Museum of the American Indian. I've been at NMAI since 2003. And this topic is really interesting to me because the Smithsonian is, so first of all, the Smithsonian is this vast, complex place, and within the Smithsonian itself, we have relevant collections, relevant materials to researchers who may be interested in specific tribal communities, specific individuals, specific families or regions, and those collections and materials may be spread throughout individual units of the Smithsonian. For the purpose of a researcher, they might as well be on opposite ends of the continent. The fact that they are at the Smithsonian does not necessarily make them easier to co-locate. And the tools that we're going to be talking about are the kinds of resources that are going to help researchers identify materials that are disparate but related. And then just also thinking about how, if any of your institutions are like mine, when I start to talk about things like content standards and data standards, everybody's eyes just glaze over because it's, nobody likes to hear about that. But there is a reason why we use these standards, and it is because by leveraging these standards, we can share data in a way that that creates all of these new possibilities. So let's stop talking about this in this kind of vague, general way, and let Jerry sort of get down to the nuts and bolts of what SNAC, which is an acronym for Social Networks and Archival Context, let him hop to it.
Okay. Thank you, Michael and Jennifer. I'll do my brief introduction. As the slide indicates, I'm Jerry Simmons. I'm the External Agency Liaison to SNAC, Social Networks and Archival Context, and I work for the National Archives and Records Administration technically in College Park, Maryland, but I do most of my work away from that facility because being an external liaison means that I work with a number of other agencies and organizations outside the National Archives on this particular SNAC project. For the past 5 to 7 years or so, SNAC has been a developing data cooperative under the leadership of 3 institutions mainly. The National Archives and Records Administration, the University of Virginia Library, and formerly IOTH, the Institute for Advanced Technology in the Humanities, and the CDL, the California Digital Library. I'm excited to announce that we have just received our 2nd grant from the Andrew Mellon Foundation. I was given the green light to say that just this morning. We've just now, actually on October 31st, we'll officially wrap the first 2-year pilot phase, where we had the assistance of about, I would say 15, the group fluctuated, 15 to 18 other cooperative partners who helped us lead the groundwork for a new data cooperative to pull in data that's already been created all over the globe about archives and other cultural heritage materials, and then ingested into the SNAC system, and then pushed outwards, but using searches for the creators of these collections as the real vehicle for getting you through the system and out to where the collections are stored. Other folks that are involved in the cooperative are institutions like the Beinecke Library at Yale, the Houghton Library at Harvard University, Princeton University, UC Irvine, Getty, the American Institute of Physics, Purdue, University of Miami, and Smithsonian, Library of Congress, and National Archives, the 3 big, the big federal agencies that are involved in it, and a few more here and there who have helped us along. So what I want to do is go ahead and launch in, because I know we don't have that much time, and as I've told Michael and Jennifer, if I start to go off the rails, as I want to do. When I teach my classes at Catholic University, I always stand up and say, Jerry always goes off script, but Michael and Jennifer are here to keep me on script because we have a very short amount of time and a lot to cover. So, and I was watching the hands go up, so I became more and more comfortable as I saw more and more hands going up. Because at the center core of the SNAC system, it does rely on a lot of these standards that Michael briefly mentioned. We leverage the use of standards and then exploit their power to make SNAC work in a more efficient way. We start out with description and cataloging. I've put cataloging there because I know a lot of museum folks refer to the description aspect as cataloging. And then really it does turn to the creation of a finding aid when it comes to archival materials. But we'll talk about everything else because we do have the system that we're applying here. The descriptive standards also include description of corporate archives, photographs, special library collections, museum objects, and so on. Authority control is the process of establishing the preferred form of a heading, such as a proper name or a subject, for use in a catalog and ensuring that all catalog records use such headings. So basically driving for consistency throughout your description effort. A preferred form of heading is typically defined by a standard. There are a lot of standards out there. We don't have time to delve into them. I will make a brief mention of the one we use in SNAC soon. Once established, the form is usually recorded in an authority file. These days, this is an electronic-based system which operates much like a catalog system where the records are arranged, usually and indexed alphabetically for future reference, along with cross-references. So variant forms of names are also a part of the equation. This is a definition that comes from the SAA's glossary. And then more specifically, name authorities and authority files, when we establish the preferred and authorized forms of the proper names, so of a person, a corporate body, or a family, and then file and store that information about these names in systems for future retrieval. These combined activities create an atmosphere of consistent access points in information systems with more robust retrieval during searching. So we're always striving towards making a more consistent approach to large masses of data, and the more we keep consistent, and our retrieval becomes more and more productive. So more about SNAC, and then for the rest of the time, about SNAC. A new data cooperative and knowledge system which facilitates searching for all types of cultural heritage collections. So archives, and loosely it covers that term really does cover it quite a bit, as you all know. Corporate archives play into this quite a bit. Special library collections, artifacts, artwork, etc., via descriptions of the collection's creators, corporate bodies or organizations, persons and families, no matter where they are stored. SNAC is currently free to use by anyone for searching. There's the link. All of this information, of course, is going to be readily available. What the image you have here, of course, is the SNAC landing page, and it provides an automatic regeneration every time you refresh the page. The mosaic display changes for you. Sometimes it naturally cycles to just a lot of men, so I like to refresh it to get a more diverse display. So at SNAC's core is this a tradition of authority control of the names of entities, creators, and subjects of primary and secondary source materials in archives, libraries, museums, and other cultural heritage institutions. SNAC exploits authority control for entities by integrating their descriptions into an environment of global searching. So it also allows one to discover contextual relationships between entities and knowledge resources. So between the creator of the collection and that actual collection, there's a contextual match you're actively making. That if you create a new SNAC record, you go through the steps to link the creator to its collection, or at least the description of that collection, no matter where it sits. And then contextual relationships between the entities, between corporate bodies to corporate bodies, person to corporate body, person to family, family to family, and so on. On this very first example, and I'm going to have a lot of these images, these are clipped right from the SNAC records. The SNAC record that exists for Byron, and I don't know the pronunciation of the last name, he's Lieutenant Governor of Alaska. That's his SNAC record on the left. And then there's the SNAC record for Western Washington State College. And through those contextual links at the bottom, you see alumnus or alumna of Western Washington State College. And then under the Western Washington State College record, you see that reciprocal link back to the governor. So SNAC uses relationship types, and I'll talk about the relationship types are pulled from a relatively new standard in archival description called EACCPF, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But we exploit these relationship types to not only explain the contextual relationship to one between these entities, but through the linking capabilities inside the system, you can move from record to record in SNAC just by hitting these links. Everything that you see in blue is an active link. So the research experience starts with a simple search in any order. And it's been described as a Google-like search. We do have a capability and new functionality that helps us do a browse search where you can see a full alphabetical run of the entity names, but that's a deeper dive for now. There's an elastic search strategy running behind the scenes, and it makes it for an easy entry to more than 4 million authority records held in the system. Data behind the scenes results from a cooperative effort of several institutions contributing collection descriptions and authority records. So many of the contributors of SNAC data actually gave us big collections of their EAD finding aids, the EAD marked up finding aids. Other institutions like Library of Congress, the National Archives, contributed their massive authority files of pre-existing authority information on creators and subjects. So all of that sort of mashed together during a research and development phase that happened a few years ago. The images cycling through the SNAC mosaic, as you saw before, and the one that's also here on this particular record, all result from wiki comments. We have a bit of a nifty little trick that we can embed the URL for one of these SNAC records into the Wikidata tools page and let it know that there's a SNAC identity for this particular person in Wikipedia, and it will go and find the SNAC record and match it up so we get a refresh image every time an image updates on Wikidata. Here you see, and I've pieced together parts of the screen because it was hard to get them all smashed into one image. There's the search, and then a click on that blue link where you see the heading highlighted takes you directly to this particular record. So SNAC relies upon two archival description standards, EAD, encoded archival description, and EACCPF, so encoded archival context for corporate bodies, persons, and families. And it facilitates the discovery and linking between authority data about creators and the descriptions of cultural heritage collections and other resources about them. In this example, we see Gloria Anzaldua's SNAC record, which behind the scenes of this record is the XML markup, the angle bracket markup from the EAC standard, but it of course presents as something a little bit more digestible. It's not a lot of coding going on. But then that record links immediately to the EAD version of her finding aid of personal papers at the University of Texas in Austin. Now that's found under the links to collections section of the SNAC record, and then there's an archival collections, and then we have that broken down as well into creator of, referenced in, or other. In this particular case, you're seeing that context description that I mentioned a couple of slides before, where you explicitly say she is the creator of her own papers, and then you click that link and SNAC takes you out to that particular finding aid on University of Texas website. So here's another example of how they work hand in hand. Below, just in the blue section, is a snippet of an EAD finding aid describing Joel Palmer's personal papers at University of Oregon. And the corporate name section of the Palmer finding aid contains a reference to the Oregon Superintendency. So from that EAD finding aid, you've got a link to the Oregon Superintendency record, and then you see that contextual link down there for Palmer associated with Palmer, Joel, and a click there takes you to his SNAC record if you were going in that direction. But this is an example of how we pull these access points out of the finding aids and bring them into the SNAC record for more utility there. Yes. Yes,
so I was just going to highlight, because this is one collection from my repository that is heavily used, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to highlight this one. But I wanted you to look at, it's hard to tell, but if you look under related names in SNAC, and it says people, you can see the number of other related people, which is like 21, I think, or 22. So that will then take you to those other names that are related to his collection. And that's very useful for a lot of the research that a lot of my students do in my class, because they want to know who else was working with Palmer or who were the other superintendents at that time. And so then it kind of takes them on this breadcrumb trail to see who those other individuals were, and then drill down to other collections, because when they land on those other people, it then shows you what collections exist, whether they're in our repository or another repository. So it's, again, providing that context, which is key to particularly a lot of either new researchers, or they're trying to present these individuals so you can see as many collections that are related to them as possible.
Here's another really good example. So the record for Jim Thorpe. SNAC offers researchers convenient and integrated access to historical collections held by multiple repositories worldwide. We're entering this new phase of development where we will accept in new partners into the cooperative, including the National Archives of France. They are ready to go. They have, for what I understand, thousands and thousands of EACCPF records already for ingest, and so we're waiting for a new phase of ingest. So wherever the collections are, SNAC will find them. So description in SNAC helps resolve the challenge of archival diaspora by offering search and discovery through the one central system of description. So a closer look at Thorpe's record illustrates just one case where archival diaspora is resolved virtually. Via Thorpe's record, researchers find an intellectual reassembly of resources about him. And you see that the arrows pointing to titles of archival resources are followed by the name of the custodial institution. So you get the title of the archival resource that is the link you're going, the destination for your link, and then you have the name of the institution that actually holds the description and the actual collections.
Yes. And I think we're going to probably talk more about this, but I think that this concept of archival diaspora, this is something that's really relevant to Native American communities. Thinking about how NMAI's collections are organized, for instance, one of the most important access points into our collections is the anthropologist or researcher who acquired an object that is now in our collection. Those anthropologists' records are all over the place, and I was thinking about Frank Speck, who's an anthropologist who worked for George Gustav Heye. And I think that we have some of his records. Some of his records are at the San Diego Museum of Man. They're at Tulane University. They're at the National Anthropological Archive. I think there might be some at American Philosophical Society. So, it's a very real issue that discovering, and I was thinking about like use cases for SNAC and how like all of the different ways that this might be relevant. If you are a tribal heritage preservation officer and you are trying to research a repatriation claim, the records of the anthropologists are vital for those claims, and they are everywhere. They are not in one single repository. They aren't necessarily even in the repository that has the object described in those records. So being able to reassemble this sort of diasporic scattering, I think that's one of the greatest values that this is going to have for the people who are at ATALM, that are here, that were that whose cultural heritage has really been affected by that archival diaspora.
Thank you, Michael. So then, SNAC also illustrates one entity's relationship to others described in the same system. So we leverage EACCPF, and we demonstrate those relationships and entities in context. Here we see Thorpe's relationship to his daughter, Grace F. Thorpe, also described in SNAC, labeled with the relationship type parent of. So parent of is just one of many relationship types available in a general control vocabulary within the EACCPF standard, where you can apply these relationships between entities when you create EACCPF records. So SNAC, again, uses EACCPF heavily behind the scenes. When we go to a demo at the end of this, I can reveal the EACCPF record if you would like to see it. So parent of is just one of many. And when we scroll forward, we're going to see the SNAC record for Grace Thorpe, and then there's that reciprocal link. If you see under the related names in SNAC, there's a direct link to Jim Thorpe, but you see the reciprocal of parent of is child of. So those are the kinds of relationships you can put together, link together in SNAC. And then, again, you find one person, it's like, oh, look, here's an entry in SNAC for someone who's described as the child of, and click on there, and you get to that person's parent. And there's a whole nother SNAC description with more and more links to collections, and on and on and on. it really does open up. There's a lot of rabbit hole sort of experience in SNAC. I know the person who works with me on SNAC at the National Archives is a huge fan of Queen Victoria, and she's taken it upon herself to try to resolve a lot of the relationships between Victoria and her many, many connections throughout the years, throughout her reign, by using the SNAC records. Not only people, her children, between Albert and then all of her children, but also American politicians who she corresponded with regularly and trying to resolve those. There's a situation currently in SNAC where older ingested data carries the very general associated with relationship type, and that happens. You'll see that between parents and children and between spouses, because that's the way the mechanical ingest of all the cataloging and descriptive data couldn't decipher. Well, I can't decide if these people are married. I'll just say they're associated with one another. And that relationship type is in there until someone, a SNAC user, a contributor or a creator of SNAC data, goes in and resolves that and gives it a more specific relationship type. That's one of my favorite things to do. I like seeing the resolution of these relationships.
How you can also think of it is, of course, we're probably all used to seeing the general MARC record, which is just a collection overview. And yeah, like Jerry was saying at the bottom, you'd say associated with, or the only way you could really do that is, just basic authority control. You couldn't include anything like this, like child of or parent of or other like families or organizations. You could certainly list those, but it's not in the same contextual way. So this takes that MARC record to a whole other level where it provides more context.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. And then here are more examples of relationship types. Grace Thorpe was an employee of the Ford Motor Company. She was alumnus or alumna of Haskell Institute, member of the National Congress of American Indians, employee of the Donnelly Corporation, and member of the Women's Auxiliary Army Corps. So there's a really good set of very robust relationship types between a person name entity and a corporate name entity. And then, of course, if you click on any of those, it'll push you to the SNAC record for those specific corporate bodies. So the identity constellation. It's a new term that's sort of being born out of the SNAC experiment, if you will, because it is really something more than a traditional authority record. Jennifer mentioned a MARC authority record and how it has, the preferred name, the heading, and then variant names, and then sources. But SNAC really does go much further beyond that. So we're calling it the identity constellation. It's the nodal point for description of corporate body and individual or family. It's similar to a traditional authority record with preferred and variant names, and it contains all components of the entity's description. So here's the SNAC entry for Red Cloud. At the top you see what may be familiar to a lot of you as a Library of Congress formatted name heading. The ingest period of SNAC also involved the donation or the contribution of the entire Library of Congress name authority file. So a lot of the Library of Congress names that were marked as preferred came into the system and were then posted as the preferred name here, which is fine, but you can change it. If your records in your particular repository indicate that the name, the more appropriately preferred name is a different form, as a SNAC user you can reestablish a new name and move the other old preferred name to a variant name. You have a lot of flexibility. You don't have that kind of flexibility with an LC authority record. It's a much more restricted process. You get the heading, their dates, the biography note there, and then the links to collection, and that's set there. And then, of course, clicking on those, you open it up and you see links to the collections, links to other entities in the system.
Jared?
Yes?
Why are there two different word codes?
Say it again?
Why are there two different word codes?
One says birth and one says death.
Well,
in there, because, again, I'm glad you pointed that out, because I'll make sure to see why that is. My guess is going to be that it was an ingest of data coming from several different points, and for some reason the computer algorithm preferencing one form over the other. Nice catch, Terry.
I thought they might call from each other, that's why I wanted to call.
Thank you. Well, at least in the biography note, it seems there's also maybe a question about it too. Anyway, so for more about the identity constellation, it enables sharing, discovery, and display of standardized information in electronic format environment. It facilitates discovery of contextual relationships among creating entities, and it facilitates linking of descriptions of creators to the descriptions of the records and other entities in context. And here you see a sort of put together screen for George horse capture and the National Museum of the American Indian. So, and then the two relationship types, employee of on his record, and then employee of, it should be employed by. Whoops, that's my mistake because I edited his record before I did this. It would be employee of. Employer of. Oh, I see it. It is correct. I'm sorry. I can't at this angle. I can't. It's too small here, and it's at a strange angle here. Sorry about that. But you see how these the linking happens inside SNAC. And here's one for Walter S. Bowman. Each identity constellation predominantly displays the entity's preferred form of name, life dates if they're known. You don't have to have dates to be in SNAC. Biography or administrative history, alternative names if they're known, and contextual links to other entities' descriptions in SNAC. Another part of SNAC is subject retrieval. So just like, again, leveraging information from EAD finding aids and from EACCPF authority records, we can pull in specific attributes that are again, being labeled with control vocabulary, and you can see these on the right-hand column there. Topical subjects, again, these might look familiar to you if you've worked with Library of Congress subject headings before. That's a lot of, but these subject headings are not being channeled in from Library of Congress. These are actually have been ingested from the finding aids about the person. That's why if you look at certain areas of SNAC, you'll see a lot of duplicate subject headings, and it's because there was just a slight difference in punctuation between finding aid A and finding aid Z. And a cataloger might have added a comma or a period, and SNAC didn't understand the difference because of the punctuation, so it said, well, I better create an additional subject entry just in case. So we have a lot of duplicate there, which we're working to resolve. That's phase 2. It's a joke now in the cooperative. Oh, that's phase 2. I'm not worried about that now. That's phase. Well, phase 2 starts on November 1st, so you better get ready. So this is a Southwest Oregon research project. There's a corporate SNAC record for a corporate body. I do notice, it bugs me more than anyone ever, that it says biographical note. I routinely email the SNAC text to say you still haven't changed it to administrative history. When you turn on the corporate record, it needs to say administrative history, not biographical note. But again, there's a place for occupations if you're talking about persons, so pulling from a controlled vocabulary of occupation terms. And then for corporate bodies, you have function terms. And here you have documenting archives and documenting Indians. Places, then we also have a component for geographical reference where we pull in geographic headings from GeoNet and the GNIS to supply all of our standardized geographical headings in the system. Now,
I think it might be worth noting that in the context of SNAC, that a corporate entity is not necessarily a corporation or even an organization. It can be an event, a tribe, and we'll get to kind of talking about that. It can be sort of anything that aggregates a group of people. How you described it? You had a better phrase for it than I do, but
well, go ahead.
yeah, I mean it's like something that defined a group of people at a specific time.
So, We've got plenty of time, and by no means am I finished. That concludes the boring slide part of the presentation. What follows now, and these are just records that I've gathered myself to do a live demonstration of the system. I do take requests. If I take a request, I can't make a guarantee that the entity that you'd like to see the record for is going to be a completely fleshed out record with an image. Disclaimer, I worked on this set last week to make sure that when I could find the Wikidata image, it was there, because I feel like the visual impact of having the SNAC record with the image is a bit more effective than just looking at. Unfortunately, I couldn't find one of Grace Thorpe earlier last week because she's not in Wikipedia yet, so I don't have anything to link her to. But it has to be in Wikipedia. It has to be free of copyright. So there are a few little stipulations I have to be careful of. But I'm going to see if I can.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
In the future, so I went to the presentation that you did at the Sears meeting at the Smithsonian, and in the future, when different institutions and repositories are able to contribute and edit, with permission from those repositories, would you be able to use like their photos as the name?
Yes.
So I was like,
Already established a precedent for that, thanks to Michael Pahn.
And that picture
Did
is
it
George
not?
Spencer.
I'm sorry.
This list brought up a question I was going to ask. How do you deal with name similarities or overlapping names, knowing that like there's 3 Billy Bowlegs, 2 of which were relatively famous? How do you deal with that?
That's conflict resolution between names. That is a typical, but long dealt with issue when it comes to authority control. So I mentioned earlier that the types of the types of standards that are really sort of buried down deep in authority control and in systems like SNAC. One of them is RDA. Anybody? Resource description and access. So RDA are the content cataloging rules that have replaced the old Anglo-American cataloging rules. But within those, there are steps to follow and rules to adhere to breaking a conflict between 2 identical name forms. And that almost always is done by applying some kind of date qualifier element. So where you would add the year of their birth to their death, perhaps, if you use it. That's how we deal with all the John Smiths. So you think of the number of John Smiths who might appear in the LC name heading file. You have to have a way to break the conflict between 2 identical names. It's almost always done with applying data elements. And the same will apply here.
So you can see with this one, again, I think this is a good example. It says biographical note, but it should be more of an administrative note because this is an organization and a movement, not necessarily an individual. But you get the picture. It's giving you this overview of the American Indian movement, very basic. And then what's most important, though, is all of these amazing archival collections. You can see 49 that they're either a creator of or referenced in. So again, this is more of the live shot of actually showing you all those different collections. And when you click on this will actually take you to that finding aid or that repository, so you can actually see that collection. So as you can see, it's really a great jumping off point for an organization, a tribe, an individual. So again, this is just one example, but this is a good example of a larger organization or movement where you can see all the different related collections, and then you can see also the related people. Of course, again, then taking you to all of these other individuals who you may have known were involved with the American Indian movement, maybe you didn't, and so maybe you want to find out more about her Panelists. So you go and check him out. So again, like we said, this will then lead you to all these other different areas of research and then these other organizations, and not just organizations, but also larger, it could be also movements or other people associated with this event as well too. So do you want to show the other ones as well, or do we want to take questions?
I think it could go free form. I think we
Yes.
have another question.
I have
Yeah.
a quick question.
Yeah.
So, like for AIM, for instance, is this only for archival collections, or would this be able to link to publications that were produced by AIM?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm going to let Jerry answer that. Because I think I know the answer, but I don't want to give the wrong information.
That's fine.
Jerry knows all. So.
Related resources.
Yeah.
Creator of, and the title, Wounded Knee 1985. If you click there, this is going to take you to a WorldCat record. So I'm sorry that it looks. We know we have a known issue with the connections being broken between WorldCat. WorldCat reshifted things without asking anybody's opinion, and it created a lot of confusion for our partners at the Archives of American Art. A lot of their SNAC records were channeling through the WorldCat descriptions, and that's why we're creating. That's where we're finding a lot of breaks there. But the related resources is a section where you can direct towards an entity's bibliographic record. So things written by them or created by them. Now, and your question was, I thought you were going
about
to
books.
Published resources, or
I was thinking newspapers, newsletters, that kind
absolutely,
of thing.
absolutely.
And
if you have a way of pulling an electronic link for that resource, it can be integrated into the record here and into this record, and then saved, and it's there forever until it's changed. I thought your question was going to go the route of like artists and people related to three-dimensional artifacts, but those would also find a place here, either in the original archival resources or in the related resources, which is really our way of saying bibliographic record for these folks.
Yeah, but I think it's a good question, because I think if I was a researcher, I'd want to know the same thing. Like, oh, this is great. There's all these archival collections, but what about everything else? And so I get it. It's like basic question. Yes, this is great. We have all of these listings for archival collections, but what about all of the actual books that were even written by or about? Which, again, that would be great, but I don't think that is yet in this realm, like specifically for individual books that are about or for.
Actually, yes.
Oh.
Depending on the record, depending on the SNAC record, you can go. Okay. Like if you were to go to Mark Twain's record, it would be an almost endless list of actual links to anything that is known to be published by him that has been actively added into the system. And actively added means two things for us. The link to those materials was ingested through finding aids or other authority data, or someone has actively added that there. Because what we have now in SNAC, again, is well over 4 million records, and some of them have just been sitting since their ingest about 5 years ago. Others, like those that relate immediately to National Archives collections, I have heavily edited those because I want them to be more direct and more specific in their relationship connections to our catalog records at National Archives. So, yes, there's a place. Yes?
So I didn't see anything, or maybe I missed it, about tribal affiliation as a field or something that you can click on, and how you deal with that. Because I know Library of Congress has a lot of problems with those.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up with the Joel Palmer one, is because that's actually a challenge that we have, even just how we upload our finding aids, because we create them in Archives Toolkit and then we upload them into Archives West, which then goes into Archives Grid, and so you're pushing it to all these things, and within that we don't have a function either for that too. So yes, we're having to create them within the confines of LC authority records, which don't always serve tribal communities and tribal affiliated entities correctly. So that's what I would like to propose, is something like this, like a module within there where you can add something like that.
Right.
Well,
Stations too.
Yeah. So I'm probably going to let Rachel Minick, who's a processing archivist at NMAI, speak more about this. But beyond the Library of Congress subject headings, it is possible to have sort of the Library of Congress's stamp of approval put on other controlled vocabularies. We're exploring the possibility of having NMAI's culture term authority list approved as, one of these sort of authorized controlled vocabularies. Is there really more to say about that?
No, but the NMAI Culture Thesaurus, as we say, is an ongoing project at the National Museum of the American Indian to use culturally appropriate terms that are determined by Native communities. And so we are already using it in our systems, and that gets pushed out to the Smithsonian Collection Search. So we're tagging all of our collections with these culture terms because we've found Library of Congress subject headings to be not only unsatisfactory but inappropriate in a lot of circumstances.
And the nice thing about our thesaurus, and this is within the domain of tribal names, but there are controlled vocabularies for lots of different things that go beyond the Library of Congress's subject headings or whatever. It does have preferred terms and non-preferred terms, spelling variants, things like that. So if you do a search on Navajo with an H instead of a J, you have to be pretty weird to do that, but it'll take you to the right thing. But something about, so it's not gonna, I don't think, one of the things that hasn't happened yet, and I think it's probably going to be a long time until it really does, is to have tribal affiliations associated with somebody's name the same way that life dates are. So that's we no matter what, for the time being, we're going to have to deal with it a different way. But
one way that it will possibly happen is that if you're using the tribal affiliation as a topical subject, it can be one of the things you index as an attribute for an entity and add it in there. But then if it's an attachment or a link, a connection to a tribal group that is recognized, at least in this system, as a corporate entity, then that connection could happen through the organization links.
That's what I was gonna mention.
And I also just want to say,
I surfed to a record that I thought would be helpful. Michael had said earlier about the connection between archaeologists and their records of where they are and whatnot. This is, pardon me for going just a little bit off script. I said I would, so there was the disclaimer at the very beginning. John Alexander Pope, in this photograph, is 21 years old. His parents did not want him near his girlfriend during the summer of 1927. Is that right? 27, yes. He graduated from Yale, and the very next day they put him on a boat with George Palmer Putnam to go on the Baffin Island expedition because they wanted him away for the summer. This is him on the deck of the FEM Morrissey, which was piloted by Bob Bartlett. He was originally from Brigus, Newfoundland, and he piloted numerous Arctic expeditions. Most of them for Perry. And even the 1906 or 1909 trip to the North Pole. Expeditions are handled in the realm of authority work as corporate entities. There are many types of corporate entities: government agencies, military groups, social organizations, but expeditions fall under that. Here's the SNAC record for Baffin Island expedition, and then you can move out to see the people who were affiliated with it. Has member. Here are more. Again, disclaimer, I've worked on this record a lot because it's a fascinating experience. The event was very fascinating. And here are the expedition had members, Putnam, John Alexander, where's Bob Bartlett, there's the captain of the boat, and then Junius Byrd, who is said to have been the inspiration, and his record is by no means complete, who is said to have been the inspiration for Indiana Jones. There's an actual photograph of him in all sort of khaki clothing with that Indiana Jones hat and what looks like could be like a leather whip around his belt or something. But he was on this boat along with Donald Kadzow, who originally worked for the American Indian Museum. in its earliest years. And so that's the kind of connections that can be made through the corporate to people and people to corporate. I hope that's helping illustrate the connection between person entities and tribal affiliations when they have them. That's something perhaps the cooperative can reach out to the Native communities and say, we need your help refining the way that Native identities are linked together with the corporate entities that are involved in their day-to-day life.
Yeah, I wanted to say two things about this. One is, so in the heading, the name heading, just right now I don't think that the standard is set so that you can have the tribal affiliation, but obviously in the biographical note, that'll say, that'll have the tribal affiliation directly associated with the individual's name. But I think that something that we need to explore is the kinds of relationships that are defined in EAC CPF, because if we can say, for instance, that somebody is a citizen of, then, as opposed to an archaeologist who has done work, or an anthropologist who has done work that's relevant to a specific tribe, we would be able to differentiate somebody who's a citizen of that tribe. And that, I think, is a really important distinction to make, obviously.
I'm sorry to keep changing
the
backdrop on you, Michael.
Yeah. But
every time he turns around, there's something new to react to.
But I think that that's the kind of input that I think that SNAC is going to benefit from hearing from.
And helping them to think about it in different ways, which is why we wanted to talk about this and bring it up, is because we realize that at the core it has these great fields and modules for doing this, but it's clearly missing a lot of things for describing our communities, our ways of life, our traditional ways of knowing, and how those are associated with these people, collections, corporate bodies.
Well, and so the cooperative right now is limited to these 18 or so member organizations for the time being. And it may never be the case that like a small tribal archive or a tiny little historical center, in a county in Nebraska, that it's ever going to make sense for those organizations to be members of the cooperative. But I think that we hopefully collectively can work out ways to edit these SNAC records and edit these name authorities to reflect, for instance, the specific indigenous names of individuals who have given English language names, and something that we're working on at NMAI, and I know a lot of museums who are large museums that are here at ATALM, we're working on identifying individuals who are otherwise anonymous in our photographs, or I shouldn't just say photographs, in our collections, period. And this, I believe, is a tool for helping give those individuals their identity within the historical record. And I think that it's really difficult to overstate the value of that.
And when we were preparing for this session, we thought about different ways of how that would actually look practically, and it could be these smaller tribal communities or museums maybe partnering with a larger repository that is a member of the cooperative in submitting updates and information, so funneled through them if it's part of one of those collections that is at that repository, to say these are the updates that need to be made, or checking back and forth. So coming up with some workflow that these could be updated in the larger database.
Yeah.
Is there a question in the back?
Yeah, my question was actually that, how would we help edit the record if
Yeah.
we saw that things needed to be?
Yeah, so again, this is still a very new project, and moving forward, that's why we wanted to have these types of discussions to figure out what are the gaps and how can we fill those, and how can we make something that's practical, so that when we see something that needs to be updated, we can make it, but then if somebody else sees something, or if we're working with a tribal community, they can tell us, okay, these are the updates that need to be made, or this is an individual that's not in there that you need to put in there. And so I envision it happening and maybe being, of course, very similar to how we work collaboratively with communities when we're working on a collection. It just might be now it's at that description level. And so rather than them coming in having to look at an actual physical collection, it's sending something out to them. This is the description. What are we missing? How can we make this better? And vice versa. If they had something in their own repository that they wanted to upload to the system, we could cooperate with them, and they could send it to us, and we could then upload it for them, if they needed assistance with that. Did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, can I actually ask to see a record?
Sure. Make your request to our DJ.
Before I move off this one, over on the far right, you'll see collection locations. If you click on that, it will show you a pin-dropped map and then a list of the repositories that are connected to the actual links to resources in the system. Okay.
I just want to say it's like 4 minutes to 5. If any of you are catching the shuttle buses to the evening event, you might want to. We probably want to wrap it up kind of soon.
Yeah.
But
we'll take the last request.
I was going to say we're not kicking anybody out.
What's your request?
If you have any follow-up questions, you're of course welcome to contact me. I've left a stack of my business cards here. You can email me, and we can have a follow-up conversation through email. Is it a person, corporate, or family?
It's a place, so probably under corporate, I would guess. Iolani Palace, and I can spell it for you. It's I-O.
Well, is it an actual building? Probably not.
No?
Did it create records?
Can I request a name then?
Sure.
King Kalautoa. K-A-L-A-K-A. Yes, there we go. It's awesome.
And you see what happened here.
Yes.
We didn't enter it in, we entered it in a familiar natural order, but it found it in its reversed subject heading form. And here we have an instance of where we might have a duplicate. Yeah, and again, what made the system create two separate records during the ingest was the fact that this one had David in it. So it said, well, these look alike, but I need to create two because they're different to me as a computer, and I don't know the difference. So there you go.
I don't know if you saw, but in the list, there were 4 instances, and they're all the same person. It just hasn't resolved yet.
So does that come up with
Phase 2.
alternative names?
That should be the
And
Yeah.
again, you see
T-shirts.
what
Yeah.
appears to be duplicate here. And again, this is algorithmy stuff that happened during the ingest of the LC name records. And when the SNAC ingest instrument didn't know what to do with the duplicate. These are things that create a tremendous amount of job security for me, for people like me, and for others who become involved in it. Because if you're like me, if you do this kind of work, if you've ever been engaged in authority control or authority cataloging, there's nothing more gratifying than resolving duplicate entries in an authority file and properly taking away names that truly are not part of the equation and getting biographies corrected, or just writing a biography at all. I'm always so astounded at when I land on a record in SNAC that, to me, in my opinion, is for a notable person, and there's 0 biography note. And it's simply because the description that was pulled into the ingest just didn't have a biography note with it somehow. So, and that happens. A lot of these records are based on very old finding instruments from museums and libraries and archives, and biography notes weren't always something they had time to do. So the contents of the records will differ, but that's sort of the mission going forward for all the SNAP cooperative members, is that we will refine and make the records more robust and useful as time goes on. So thank you for your time. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Really quick, how long has this project been in?
Roughly 5 years since the ingest started. Ingest sort of tapered off about 2 years ago when our pilot program started, and August of 2015 was when we received the first Mellon grant, and that's when the gathering of the partners, the cooperative partners, started. We just had our 4th and last meeting for this 2-year phase last month, and now we're getting geared up for phase 2. See what else we can do.
Is it available for public use?
Absolutely. Go to snaccooperative.org, and it's free to search. Yep.
Thank you all
everyone.
for coming.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful evening.